Harold was 68 years old and he had lived alone on his farm for 3 years. His wife Ellen had passed away and left him with nothing but wheat fields and memories. Every evening he walked the edges of his property to check the fences and watch the sun go down. It was the only thing that made him feel like he still had a purpose in this world. The year was 2147, and Earth had joined something called the Galactic Concord. Humans had met aliens, and the universe had become much bigger than anyone had imagined. But Harold did not care much about all that. He was a farmer in Nebraska, and his life was about soil and seeds and hard work. Aliens were something he saw on the news and nothing more. That evening changed everything. Harold was walking near his northern wheat field when he saw the smoke. Something had crashed in the middle of his crops and torn a long, ugly scar through the golden wheat. He grabbed his flashlight and hurried toward the wreckage. His old legs complained, but he pushed forward anyway. The thing that had crashed was small and shaped like a teardrop. It was made of smooth, dark metal that reflected the last light of the setting sun. Harold had never seen anything like it, but he knew right away that it was not from Earth. This was an alien escape pod. He approached slowly with his heart beating fast in his chest. The side of the pod had cracked open, and he could see movement inside. Harold shined his flashlight through the gap, and what he saw made him stop breathing for a moment. There was a woman inside. At least she looked like a woman. Her skin was pale blue like a winter sky, and her eyes were silver with no white parts at all. She was young and beautiful in a strange way that Harold could not describe. She was holding something against her chest, and when Harold looked closer, he saw it was a child. The boy looked almost human. He had dark hair and a small nose and round cheeks like any other kid. But there were faint blue lines on his skin like thin rivers running under the surface. His eyes were closed and he was not moving. The woman looked at Harold with pure terror in her silver eyes. She pulled her son closer and pressed herself against the back of the pod. She said something in a language Harold did not understand. Harold held up his hands to show he meant no harm. He spoke slowly and clearly. "I am not going to hurt you. Do you understand me? Are you injured?" The woman stared at him for a long moment. Then she spoke in broken English. "Please, do not report us. They will kill us, please." Harold looked at the woman and her unconscious child. He thought about what the right thing to do was. The law said he should contact the authorities. The law said unregistered aliens were dangerous. But Harold had never been very good at following laws that did not make sense to him. "Can you walk?" he asked. The woman nodded slowly. "Then come with me. My house is not far. We need to look at your boy." The woman hesitated. She searched Harold's face for any sign of deception. Whatever she found, there must have been enough because she carefully climbed out of the pod. She held her son in her arms like he was made of glass. Harold led them across the wheat field toward his farmhouse. The woman limped beside him and he could see dark blue blood on her leg. She was hurt worse than she was letting on. But she never complained and she never slowed down. She just kept walking and holding her child. When they reached the house, Harold opened the door and let them inside. The woman looked around at the simple rooms with confusion on her face. Harold pointed to the old couch in the living room. "Put him down there. Let me see how bad it is." The woman laid her son on the couch with gentle hands. The boy was breathing, but his breaths were shallow and weak. Harold could see a bruise forming on the side of his head. "What is his name?" Harold asked. "His name is, and I am. I am Harold. Now tell me what happened while I get some supplies." Harold went to the kitchen and gathered clean cloths and water, and the old first aid kit Ellen had always kept under the sink. When he came back, was kneeling beside her son and holding his small hand in hers. "We were on a transport vessel," she said. Her voice was quiet and full of pain. "My people, they cast us out. They put us in the escape pod and launched us toward the nearest planet. They did not care if we lived or died." "Why would they do that?" Harold asked as he began cleaning the cut on her leg. looked down at her son. Because of what he is, his father was human, a scientist who worked with my people. We loved each other, but that love was forbidden. When the Purity Council discovered us, they killed him. They wanted to kill too, but I ran. I hid for years. They finally found us. Harold listened in silence. He wrapped her leg with a clean bandage and then turned his attention to. The boy was starting to stir. His eyes fluttered open, and they were beautiful eyes that were half silver and half brown. "Mama," he whispered, gathered him into her arms and held him close. Tears ran down her blue cheeks. I am here, my love. We are safe now." Harold watched them and felt something stir in his old heart, something that had been sleeping since Ellen died. These two had nobody in the entire universe. They had been thrown away like garbage by their own kind, and somehow they had landed in his wheat field. "You can stay here," Harold said, "for as long as you need." Looked up at him with disbelief. "You do not know us, you do not owe us anything. Why would you help us?" Harold thought about that question. He thought about Ellen and how she had always fed any stranger who came to their door. He thought about the empty rooms in this house and the silence that had become his only companion. "Because someone has to," he said simply. Opened her mouth to say something else, but Harold held up his hand. "There is something you should know. You said the Purity Council found you. Does that mean they will come looking?" His face went pale, which Harold had not thought possible given her blue skin. She nodded slowly. "They will come. They have marked us for cleansing. They will not stop until is dead." Harold looked at the small boy who had fallen asleep in his mother's arms. He looked so innocent and so fragile. Harold thought about the shotgun in his closet and the fence around his property, and all the years he had spent protecting this land. "Then we better be ready for them," he said. Outside the window, the stars were coming out one by one. Somewhere up there in the darkness, enemies were searching for a mother and her child. But down here on this old farm in Nebraska, a human man had made a decision. He would not let them be taken, not without a fight. Harold did not know it yet, but his lonely life had just ended. A new life was beginning. A life with purpose and family and something worth protecting. All because he had chosen to be kind when it would have been easier to walk away. The first week was difficult for everyone. Watched Harold like a wounded animal watches a predator. She waited for him to reveal his true intentions. She waited for him to demand payment or to call the authorities when she was sleeping. But none of that happened. Harold simply lived his life. He woke up early and made coffee. He cooked simple meals of eggs and bread and vegetables from his garden. He left food outside the guest room door when refused to come out. He never pushed. He never demanded. He just waited. Recovered faster than his mother expected. Children are strong that way. By the third day, he was sitting up and asking questions about everything he saw. What was that machine that made heat? Why did Harold have so many books made of paper? What were those feathered creatures outside making so much noise? Harold answered every question with patience. He explained that the machine was called a stove. He explained that he liked the feel of paper books even though screens were easier. He explained that the feathered creatures were chickens and they gave eggs for breakfast. Was fascinated. He had spent his whole short life hiding on space stations and cargo ships. He had never seen a farm. He had never seen animals that were not dangerous. He had never met a human who spoke softly and moved slowly and never raised his voice in anger. On the fifth day, asked if he could go outside, immediately said no. It was too dangerous. Someone might see him. Harold watched this exchange and said nothing. He finished his breakfast and went outside to do his chores. An hour later, looked out the window and her heart nearly stopped. Was not in the house. She ran to the door and threw it open, ready to scream his name. Then she saw them. Harold was standing by the chicken coop with beside him. The old man was showing the boy how to scatter feed on the ground. The chickens were crowding around their feet and was laughing. It was the first time had heard her son laugh in months. She stood frozen in the doorway. Part of her wanted to run out there and grab and drag him back inside where it was safe, but another part of her recognized something important. Needed this. He needed sunshine and fresh air and a reason to smile. He could not spend his whole life hiding in dark rooms. Harold looked up and saw her watching. He gave her a small nod and then turned back too. He handed the boy a basket and pointed toward the nesting boxes, reached inside with careful hands and pulled out a brown egg. His face lit up like he had found treasure. That evening came out of the guest room for dinner. She sat at the table with Harold and then they ate together. Nobody spoke much, but it was a comfortable silence. The kind of silence that does not need to be filled. After went asleep sat with Harold on the front porch. The night was warm and full of cricket songs. Had never heard crickets before and she found the sound strange but pleasant. "Thank you," she said quietly, "for what you did today with." Harold shrugged. "Boy needs to learn useful things. Collecting eggs is useful. Among my people men do not spend time with children. It is considered beneath them. Child raising is women's work." Harold made a sound that might have been a laugh. "That is a foolish way to think. Some of the best moments of a man's life come from teaching young ones." Looked at him with curiosity. "Do you have children?" Harold was quiet for a long moment. "No, my wife and I tried for many years, but it was not meant to be. Ellen always said we would have been good parents. I think she was right." "I am sorry." "Do not be. Life gives us what it gives us. We just have to make the best of it." They sat in silence after that, felt something shifting inside her. She had been so certain that all humans were either enemies or tools to be used. Her people had taught her that humans were primitive and untrustworthy, but Harold did not fit that description at all. The second week brought a new problem. A small drone appeared in the sky above the farm. It hovered there for several minutes scanning the property below. Harold saw it from the barn and his stomach went cold. He walked calmly back to the house and found already hiding within the cellar. Good. She had good instincts. Harold went to his communication terminal and waited. Sure enough, a message came through from the local Galactic Affairs office. A bored voice asked him to confirm that he was the sole resident of the property. "That is correct," Harold said without hesitation. "Just me and the chickens. We have received reports of possible unregistered alien activity in your sector. Have you seen anything unusual?" "Nothing unusual here. Same wheat and same dirt as always. You know how it is." The voice seemed satisfied. The drone flew away. Harold waited until it was completely gone before he went down to the cellar. "They are looking for us," said. Her voice was shaking. "They are looking everywhere. That does not mean they will find anything." "You lied for us. Why?" Harold sat down on an old wooden crate. His knees complained, but he ignored them. "Because you and your boy have not done anything wrong. You do not deserve to be hunted like criminals." Silver eyes filled with tears. "I do not understand you, Harold. I have met many humans over the years. Some were cruel, some were kind but weak. Some wanted things from me that I did not want to give. But you want nothing, you ask for nothing, you just help." Harold thought about how to explain it. He thought about Ellen and his parents and his grandparents who had built this farm with their bare hands. He thought about what they had taught him about being a good person. "My wife Ellen was the best person I ever knew," he said. "She died 3 years ago and I have been alone ever since. When I found you in that field, I heard her voice in my head. She told me to help you. She told me that this was what good people do, so I listened to her. That is all." Wiped her eyes. "She sounds like a wonderful woman." "She was, and I think she would have liked you very much, both of you." From that night forward stopped waiting for Harold to betray them. She stopped watching him with suspicious eyes. She began to trust him. It was a small beginning, but it was a beginning nonetheless. Continued to follow Harold everywhere. He learned to feed the chickens and water the garden and check the wheat for pests. He asked 1,000 questions, and Harold answered every single one. The old man and the alien boy formed a bond that neither of them had expected. One morning spoke his first full sentence in English without any help. He pointed at the sunrise and said to Harold, "The sky is pretty today." Harold smiled and ruffled the boy's dark hair. "Yes, it is. Yes, it is." Watched from the window with tears running down her blue cheeks. Her son was healing. He was becoming a child again instead of a refugee. And it was all because of one old human farmer who had chosen kindness over fear. She did not know what the future would bring. She did not know if they would ever truly be safe. But for the first time in years, she had something she had almost forgotten existed. She had hope. 4 weeks had passed since and had crashed into Harold's wheat field. Life on the farm had found a comfortable rhythm, helped with the cooking and the cleaning, learned something new every day. Harold worked his land and watched over his strange little family with quiet pride. But peace never lasts forever. The news came on a Tuesday morning. Harold was listening to his old radio while drinking coffee when the announcement interrupted the regular broadcast. An enforcement vessel had entered Earth's orbit. They were requesting permission to retrieve what they called stolen property from the surface. Harold looked across the kitchenette. Her blue skin had gone pale and her hands were trembling around her cup. She knew exactly what stolen property meant. It meant her son. "They found us," she whispered. "They have not found anything yet," Harold said firmly. "They are just fishing. We need to be smart about this." Over the next few days, Harold taught in every hiding spot on the farm. There was a space behind the old tool shed where the wall did not quite meet the ground. There was a cellar beneath the barn that his grandfather had built during a war long ago. There was a hollow space inside the hay loft where a small boy could disappear completely. They created signals. 1 whistle meant stay hidden. 2 whistles meant it was safe to come out. 3 whistles meant run for the woods and do not look back. Also finally told Harold the full story of his father. His name was Daniel Price, and he had been working on a research station. He had been assigned to study human genetics, and that was how he met. She was a lab assistant with bright silver eyes and a curious mind. They fell in love slowly. It was forbidden by law for their kind to mix with other species. The Purity Council believed that blood must remain clean. Hybrids were considered abominations, but love does not care about laws. When became pregnant, she knew they were in danger. Daniel wanted to take her away to Earth, but there was no time. The Purity Council discovered them before they could escape. Daniel was executed in front of. They would have killed the baby too, but ran. She stole a shuttle and disappeared into the vastness of space. For 6 years she hid on stations and cargo ships. She worked terrible jobs and lived in terrible places. She did whatever she had to do to keep alive. But the Purity Council never stopped hunting. They had spies everywhere. Eventually they found her. Harold listened to all of this without interrupting. When finished, he reached across the table and placed his weathered hand on hers. "Daniel sounds like a good man," he said. "He would be proud of how you have protected his son." Could not speak. She just nodded and let the tears fall. The enforcers came 3 days later. Harold was in the barn when he heard the sound of vehicles approaching. He stepped outside and saw 2 sleek alien transports landing in his front yard. Behind them was a human government car with official markings. A woman stepped out of the government car. She was middle-aged with gray hair and a stern face. Harold recognized the uniform. She was from the Galactic Affairs office. Her name tag said Director Marsh. 2 emerged from the alien transports. They were tall and imposing with the same blue skin as but darker like a deep ocean. They wore black uniforms with silver symbols that Harold assumed meant something important. Their faces showed no emotion at all. Harold walked slowly toward them. He had sent the signal and he knew and were hiding in the barn cellar. Now he just had to buy them time. "Can I help you folks?" he asked in his friendliest voice. Director Marsh stepped forward. "Mister, I am Director Marsh from the Regional Galactic Affairs Office. These are representatives of the Purity Council. They have reason to believe you may be harboring unregistered aliens on your property." "Is that so?" Harold scratched his chin like he was thinking hard. "Well, I hate to disappoint, but it is just me out here. Has been for years." One of them spoke. His voice was cold and sharp. "We have tracked an escape pod to this region. Our sensors detected life signs on your property. Do not waste our time with lies, human." Harold felt anger rise in his chest, but he kept his face calm. "I do not know anything about escape pods or life signs. What I do know is that this is my property, has been in my family for 4 generations, and I do not take kindly to strangers calling me a liar." They took a step forward. "You will allow us to search this farm. If you resist, we will use force." Harold did not back down. He stood his ground and met the alien's cold eyes. "No, I will not allow that. This is Earth. This is my land, and you have no jurisdiction here." Director Marsh looked uncomfortable. "Mister, I understand your concerns, but the Galactic Concord has agreements about fugitive recovery. If they have legitimate claims, then we are obligated to assist." "The Sovereign Territory Act says otherwise," Harold replied. He had been doing his research. "Private property on Earth cannot be searched by foreign species representatives without a warrant from a human court. Do you have such a warrant, Director?" Marsh hesitated. She clearly had not expected an old farmer to know the law so well. "No, we do not have a warrant yet." "Then I suggest you come back when you do. Until then, I would appreciate it if you would get off my land." The enforcer's face twisted with anger. "You dare to obstruct us? Do you have any idea who we are? We are the Purity Council. We answer to no one." Harold walked back to his porch and picked up something he had left leaning against the wall. It was his grandfather's shotgun. He held it casually, but the message was clear. "On Earth you answer to us. Now I am going to ask you one more time politely. Please leave my property." For a long moment nobody moved. The tension was thick enough to cut with a knife. The enforcers looked like they wanted to tear Harold apart, but they also knew that attacking a human on human soil would create an interstellar incident. Finally, Director Marsh spoke. "We will go, for now. But mister, I strongly suggest you cooperate. This will not end well for you if you are hiding something." They turned and walked back to their transports without another word. But the lead enforcer stopped at the door and looked back at Harold. "We will return human, and when we do, no piece of paper will save you or the abominations you protect." They left. Harold watched them until they disappeared over the horizon. Only then did he let out the breath he had been holding. He went to the barn and gave 2 whistles. A moment later emerged from the cellar within her arms. Her face was streaked with tears. "You could have died," she said. "They could have killed you." Harold set down the shotgun. "They could have tried, but I was not going to let them take you, not without a fight." That night Director Marsh called Harold on his private line. Her voice was different than before, softer. "Mister, I know you are hiding them, the mother and the child." Harold said nothing. "I am not going to report it. What they want to do to that boy is barbaric. He is just a child." She paused. "But you need to understand, they will come back, and next time I might not be able to help you." "I understand," Harold said. "Thank you, Director." "Just and mister, whatever you are planning, I hope it works. That little family deserves a chance." Harold hung up the phone and looked out the window. Was sitting on the porch with a sleep in her lap. The moonlight made her blue skin glow like something from a dream. He did not know how this story would end, but he knew one thing for certain: he would not give up, not now, not ever. These 2 were his family now, and family protects family. 6 months had passed since the enforcers came to Harold's farm. 6 months of quiet days and peaceful nights. 6 months of healing and growing and becoming something none of them had expected. They had become a family. It happened slowly like the changing of seasons. Stopped sleeping with one eye open. She stopped flinching at every strange sound. She learned to trust that tomorrow would come and it would be safe. Harold taught her to drive the old pickup truck, and she discovered a freedom she had never known. The wind in her hair and the open road ahead made her feel alive in ways she could not describe. Thrived like a flower finally given sunlight. Harold's lawyer friend had helped create forged documents and now attended the small local school under a human name. The other children accepted him without question. They thought his faint blue markings were just unusual birthmarks. Children are good that way. They see a friend, not a difference. The boy learned to read English and discovered a passion for books about animals. He learned math and science and history. He made friends who invited him to play after school. He came home every day with stories to tell and drawings to share. Harold put those drawings on the refrigerator with magnets. Soon the entire surface was covered with pictures of chickens and wheat fields and stick figures holding hands. One drawing showed 3 figures standing in front of a house. A tall one with a hat, a blue one with long hair, a small one in the middle. Underneath in shaky letters it said "Our Family." Harold cried when he saw that one. He did not let or see, but later that night he sat alone in his room and wept tears he had been holding for 3 years. Ellen would have loved this. She would have loved them both so much. The community began to accept and as well. Harold told everyone they were distant relatives from out west, a niece he had lost touch with and her son. The neighbors nodded and smiled and welcomed them with casseroles and invitations to church socials. Old from the farm next door taught how to make apple pie. The family invited them over for backyard barbecues. The children at school invited to birthday parties. It was simple human kindness extended without question or condition. Had never experienced anything like it. Among the kindness always came with expectations. There was always a debt to be repaid or a favor to be demanded later. But these humans gave freely and wanted nothing in return except friendship. "I do not understand your people," she told Harold one evening. They were sitting on the porch watching the sunset as had become their habit. "You have no reason to help strangers, yet you do it anyway." Harold rocked slowly in his chair. "Most folks are good at heart. They just need a chance to show it. Fear makes people do ugly things, but kindness is our natural state. At least that is what I believe." They do not believe that. They believe in strength and purity and domination. They see kindness as weakness. Then they are fools. Kindness is the strongest thing there is. It builds bridges where walls used to stand. It turns enemies into friends. It changes the world one person at a time. Thought about that for a long while. She thought about Daniel and how his kindness had changed her life. She thought about Harold and how his kindness had saved her son. Maybe the humans were onto something after all. As the months passed, discovered that she was good at managing things. She looked at Harold's farm with fresh eyes and saw ways to improve it. She helped him organize his finances and update his equipment. She found markets where his wheat would sell for better prices. The farm had been struggling for years, but under careful management it began to prosper again. Harold watched with amazement and gratitude. "You have a gift for this," he told her. "You could run any business in the galaxy." Smiled. It was something she did more often now. "I just see patterns and problems. Solutions come naturally after that." One morning in the 5th month, something happened that changed everything. Was eating breakfast before school when he looked up at Harold and spoke 2 simple words. "Good morning, Grandpa." The kitchen went silent. The spoon stopped halfway to her mouth. Harold stared at the boy with wide eyes. "What did you call me?" he asked softly. Suddenly looked uncertain. "Is that okay? Tommy at school calls his grandfather Grandpa. You take care of me like Tommy's grandpa takes care of him. so I thought maybe I could call you that too." Harold's eyes filled with tears. He reached across the table and took small hand in his own weathered one. "That is more than okay. That is perfect." Watched them and felt her heart swell with emotion. She had been so afraid for so long, afraid of the Purity Council, afraid of humans, afraid of hopping for anything good. But here in this simple farmhouse she had found something she never thought possible. She had found a home. The warning came in the 7th month. Harold received an anonymous message on his terminal. It was written in formal script which translated with trembling hands. The Purity Council had issued a final ultimatum. Surrender the hybrid child within 30 days or face severe consequences. Earth's laws would no longer protect them. That night Harold had a minor heart episode. The stress of the past months had taken its toll on his old body. He collapsed in the barn and found him gasping for breath. She carried him to the house and called for medical help. The doctor came and gave Harold medication and strict instructions to rest. But Harold, being Harold, was back on his feet the next morning trying to feed the chickens. "You impossible stubborn man," scolded him, but there was love in her voice. "Let me take care of things. Let me take care of you." For the first time in his life, Harold let someone else carry the burden. He sat on the porch and watched as ran the farm with skill and confidence. He watched as helped her with the chores, chattering happily about everything and nothing. He had spent 3 years alone after Ellen died, 3 years of silence and emptiness. He had thought his life was over, but now he realized it had just been waiting, waiting for these two to fall from the sky and give him a reason to keep going. "Harold," said one evening, they were watching chase fireflies in the front yard, "whatever happens next, I want you to know something. You saved us, not just our lives but our souls. We were broken when we came here. You made us whole again." Harold nodded slowly. "You saved me too. I was just existing before you came, going through the motions and waiting to die. You and that boy gave me something to live for." They sat together in comfortable silence. Somewhere out there in the darkness, the Purity Council was making plans. The clock was ticking down to confrontation, but in this moment there was only peace. Caught a firefly and ran over to show them. His eyes were bright with wonder and joy. He was not thinking about aliens or danger or death. He was just a boy enjoying a summer night with his family. Harold looked at that small, happy face and made a silent promise. Whatever came next, he would face it. He would fight with everything he had, because some things were worth fighting for. And this family was worth everything. The enforcement vessel descended from the clouds like a dark omen. It was massive and black and shaped like a blade designed to cut through anything that stood in its way. Harold watched it from his porch with and beside him. The 30 days were up. "Take inside," Harold said quietly. "Use the cellar in the barn." Shook her head. "No, we are done running. Whatever happens, we face it together." Harold wanted to argue, but he saw the determination in her silver eyes. She had made her choice. He nodded and turned back to watch the approaching ship. 3 transport vehicles separated from the main vessel and dropped toward the farm. They landed in formation around the property, cutting off any escape route. Doors opened and enforcers poured out. There were at least 20 of them, all armed and armored. The lead enforcer was the same one from before. He walked toward the house with cold satisfaction on his face. Behind him, his soldiers spread out surrounding the farm like a net. "It ends today, human," the enforcer called out. "Your government has withdrawn protection. Your laws mean nothing now. Surrender the abomination and you may yet live." Harold stepped off the porch and walked toward the gate. His bones ached and his heart was beating too fast, but he kept his back straight and his head high. He had faced hard times before. He would face this too. "No," he said simply. The enforcer laughed. It was not a pleasant sound. "One old man against the Purity Council. You cannot be serious." "He is not alone." The voice came from behind Harold. He turned and saw something that made his heart swell with pride and disbelief. People were coming. They were walking across the fields from every direction. Old from next door was there with her husband and their grown sons. The family came with their farmhands. The Hendersons and the families Harold had known his whole life. Families who had welcomed and into their homes and hearts. They kept coming. Dozens of them. Men and women and even some teenagers. They walked through the wheat fields and gathered behind Harold, forming a human wall between the enforcers and the farmhouse. Old stepped up beside Harold. When we heard what was happening, we knew we had to come. That boy is one of ours now. We protect our own. The enforcer stared at the crowd with something like confusion. What is this? You would risk your lives for an alien hybrid, for something that should not exist. A man named George Henderson pushed forward. He was a big farmer with hands like shovels. That something is a little boy who plays with my kids every weekend. That something has a name. His name is, and he belongs here. More voices rose up in agreement. The farmers of Nebraska had made their choice. They stood shoulder to shoulder, forming a barrier of human solidarity. The enforcer's confusion turned to rage. Primitives, all of you are primitives. We will simply remove you by force. I would not recommend that. Another new voice. Everyone turned to see a convoy of military vehicles approaching from the main road. Earth Defense Force markings were visible on the sides. Director Marsh stepped out of the lead vehicle, followed by soldiers in combat armor. She walked toward the standoff with a tablet in her hand. Her face was calm, but her eyes were hard. Commander, she addressed the enforcer, I am Director Marsh of the Galactic Affairs Office. I am here to inform you that your operation has been terminated. The enforcer sneered. You have no authority here, human. Your government agreed to step aside. Some bureaucrats agreed to that, yes. But last night our Supreme Council held an emergency session. They reviewed the case of and they made a decision. She held up the tablet. By unanimous vote, they have granted both of them asylum status under Earth protection. Any attempt to remove them will be considered an act of war. The enforcer went rigid. That is impossible. The Galactic Concord agreements clearly state that member species have jurisdiction over their own citizens. Renounced her citizenship 6 years ago when she fled your persecution, and is half-human, which makes him a citizen of Earth by birth. Your Purity Council has no legal claim to either of them. Smiled coldly. Shall I continue explaining galactic law to you, or would you like to leave peacefully? The enforcer stood frozen with fury. He looked at the crowd of farmers and the armed soldiers and the humans who refused to give way. He looked at his own soldiers who seemed uncertain now. This was supposed to be a simple extraction. It had become something much more complicated. This is not over, he hissed. The Purity Council does not forget. We do not forgive. Then come back any time you like, Harold said. He stepped forward until he was face to face with the enforcer. We will be waiting, and next time bring more soldiers. You are going to need them. For a long moment the two stared at each other, human and old farmer and trained warrior. Then the enforcer turned and walked back to his transport. His soldiers followed. The black ships lifted off and climbed toward the waiting vessel in orbit. Within minutes they were gone. The sky was clear again. A cheer went up from the crowd. People were hugging each other and laughing and crying. Harold felt arms wrap around him and looked down to see clinging to his waist. Is it over, Grandpa? The boy asked. Are they gone for good? Harold knelt down and looked into those beautiful half-silver, half-brown eyes. They might come back someday, but if they do, we will be ready. We have friends now, we have family, and we have a home worth fighting for. Came over and joined them. She was weeping openly, but they were tears of joy. She embraced Harold and together holding them tight. Thank you, she whispered. Thank you all. Director Marsh approached with official documents in her hand. There is one more thing. These are the citizenship papers. effective immediately. You and are legal residents of Earth with full rights and protections. Took the papers with trembling hands. She stared at them like they were some kind of miracle. 6 months later, life on the farm had settled into a new normal. The wheat grew tall and golden under the summer sun. The chickens clucked and scratched in their yard, and the family that had been brought together by chance had grown roots that nothing could tear apart. Harold sat on his porch watching the sunset as he did every evening. But now he was not alone. Sat beside him with a cup of coffee in her hands, was playing in the yard with a puppy they had adopted from the shelter. The farm was no longer just in Harold's name. The deed now listed all three of them as owners. Family Farm. The sign out front read. It felt right. "I used to be afraid of those stars," said quietly. She was looking up at the sky where the first points of light were appearing. They meant danger and running and never belonging anywhere. "And now?" Harold asked. "Now they are just beautiful, just lights in the sky." She smiled and reached over to take his hand. "I have everything I need right here." Came running over with the puppy bouncing at his heels. "Grandpa, look, Luna learned a new trick. Watch this." Harold watched the boy try to get the excited puppy to sit. It took several attempts, but finally Luna obeyed and cheered with triumph. This was what mattered, Harold thought. Not grand adventures or galactic conflicts, just quiet moments with the people you love. Just a small boy and his dog and a family that had found each other against all odds. He thought about Ellen and knew she was watching from somewhere. He hoped she was proud. He had done what she would have wanted. He had opened his heart when it would have been easier to close it. He had chosen kindness when fear was the simpler path. And in doing so, he had gained everything. The stars came out one by one, filling the sky with light. Somewhere out there, civilizations rose and fell. Wars were fought and empires crumbled. But here on this small farm in Nebraska, a human and two aliens sat together watching the night arrive. They were home. They were family. And that was enough.